in
And to
terms
be
of
yourself and to be your authentic self, Paul.
absolutely. And I started up with the clown stuff again, and people love it, and I love researching it. I'm writing the book on the thing now, and I have a huge level of support and interest in the book already. And I feel like I'm finally me. I'm free. I'm doing what I need, what I was intended to do and be in the
Yes.
world, and I'm utilizing my own creativity, which I have a degree in. I may as well have used it eventually, but it's hard. It's the process and it's a struggle
Yeah.
because, I need money to live at the end of the day.
Yes.
I left a very well-paying job
Mm.
to start from the beginning and be my own boss. And like I said, it's growing steadily. And I've been blessed this past week, and month that the channel's just grown so much that I've doubled the earnings I was on up until this point. Just with the extra viewership. I mean, it's nowhere near what I used to earn, but
Yeah.
it's showing me it's going in the right direction. And I
Course.
might be able to keep doing this as a
No,
job.
no, not
Or, or,
might.
you
Not
know,
might. Words have so much power, Paul, as you
yeah.
know. You
But
will, you will have enough money to be able to continue and to grow and to thrive. You will look back, remember this date, remember the
all right.
year. You will
Yeah.
look back in 4 years' time and say, remember I was talking to Noble about, we was only 6 months into this business, and look where we are now. You know, look where the channel is. I've got the books out. I'm on my second book. I've got like the third book in mind. You're gonna look back and think, yeah, the Most High only gives you as much as you can deal with.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, this is what I mean. It's all pointing in the right direction. It's working, and I all I had like I have to put the effort in, and he gives it back. Is what I'm finding, and I took the leap of faith, and it's paying off. It's paying dividends. And again, I have a long way to go. I'm still on technically I'm on universal credit to back up any earnings I have from the
Yeah.
loss. But come March, that goes. I get nothing from the government anymore,
Mhm.
and I'm on my own in terms of earnings. So my
Yeah.
target is by March to have the book almost ready to be released,
Mhm.
and to have my YouTube earnings at a decent enough level that I can at least pay the rent.
Yeah.
I might actually hit 600 this month with YouTube revenue and Patreon. So that's rent.
Yeah.
That's that not food. That's just rent covered for 1 month.
Yes. Yes.
With the trajectory, by March, hopefully I can have something more reasonable on top of the money I earn from my photography
Photography.
business, which is going to
Yes.
take a while to grow. So that's my life up until now, and that's who I am, and that's where I'm at, and that's the
It's
wave I'm riding currently.
Yes, why riding that wave very well, sir. It's most definitely been a an interesting journey. As I say, it mirrors so much, I guess, of so many creators. Not so much these days. I don't have as much time, but as a youngster, I used to be a painter and a drawer myself. Um, it's very much a creative as well. Career wise, I've been through that whole corporate system and had that. Well, you would be a perfect managing director. We're gonna fast track you, like and then as you say, you get these outside people coming in and you're training them to be, and you're like, what's going on here? Am I just being used for to enrich somebody else? And then you say to yourself, actually, you know what? Let's take the big dive. Let's jump out, into this big wide business world, and let's actually do it for myself rather than earning millions of pounds for these other people and I'm being mistreated. Let's just do it. Let's put in the hard work now and let's reap the rewards, later.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm I again, like I said earlier, I cannot pretend to be something I'm not anymore. That did more spiritual damage to me than the drugs, I think, in the long run. Like I said, at your core when you're not living up to God's plan for you.
Yeah.
You just know it, and it's hard. I could have said something more secular, like living up to your full potential, but that's what it really is. It's that God made you as this individual with all these minuses and pluses to your personality, and you're going to
Yeah.
play to your strengths. And if you do, play to your strengths, you'll have life more abundantly, and you will succeed in those things. And when you're just not doing that, and I felt like for 5 years, in a way, I was being trained and I learned a lot, don't get me wrong,
Yes.
but it got to a point where I was holding on and it was time to move on.
Hmm.
And things were happening which were telling me, move on, move on, move on from himself, from God himself, I would say now, And when I finally listened, I could see that there was a net in place, He
Yeah.
had a path for me to follow, and the arrows were pointing that way, go that way,
Yeah.
And I've just been listening to those subtle hints, and again, things have just got so much better.
Oh,
Uh,
definitely. When you're
but
listening to that first thought that you have, I mentioned this a few times on the broadcast. You have an initial thought. Here's a scenario to paint the vivid picture. You're in your vehicle and you're driving, and you get that inclination. You see a bit of traffic up ahead, and you think, "Should I turn off and do the shortcut?" No, I'll stay in it. It doesn't look too bad. And you're there
yeah,
for 20 minutes. That first thought, that first idea to do something, go with it. Go with that instinctual thought, which is guided by the Most High.
absolutely. Follow your gut. I mean, this is the thing, right? My wife always says we need to do something, and I always second guess it because it's like, nah. I mean, she's following her gut on a situation. I'm not. I mean, I'm always overcritical about something, and it always turns out her gut feeling was 100% correct. We should have done what she said, So I'm kind of learning over the years. I'm just going to listen to my wife on this one. I think she's better at following her instincts than I am. But yeah, I'm getting better. I'm getting better. What can I say? But
Yes,
like I said, it was thanks to her that I had the courage to actually quit and do what we wanted to do. I don't think I could have done it without her. And I certainly couldn't have started the website or anything, or the business, the technological side of it and the networking side without her help as well. And we're a team, at
yes,
the end of the day.
yes. Thanks to Mrs. Thanks to the Mrs. for
Sorry.
putting the batteries, quote unquote, in your back and giving you that inertia to say, no, let's do it. There's no time like the present, Paul. Let's bloody do it.
I think my listeners need to also understand, I mean, there wouldn't even be a channel right now that they're on enjoying and watching my videos without her as well. So there really is, she's one of the major players in that game. So, yeah.
100%. Have you gone down any specific denomination, reference Christianity, or are you just literally in the Word and studying the book, etc.? And
I,
you know,
I suppose I'm non-denominational. Traditionally is what that would be called, but I'm also a bit of a contrarian in a way.
okay,
My worldview on Christian history isn't the mainstream biblical, Sunday school churchianity type of view of things. I'm not a Sethite believer that all the evil came, that the giants that were created, the Nephilim, were created by just men having sex, evil men having sex with evil women. I believe that fallen angels came down and mated with women to create giants. But that's just not the mainstream church understanding of what happened, what went down there in Genesis 6. So that alone makes me a contrarian straight away from the very beginning of the Bible. And I came at it all from the back door, I suppose. I'm a backdoor Christian in that respect, that I didn't grow up in a church. I don't speak Christianese. I don't sound like a Christian. That's the thing. I don't know how to be like that or act like that in a way. I read the word, I follow Jesus as my example, and I do my research and I let God lead my research through the words, and I glean knowledge and information from it, and I share my thoughts on my channel and my research on my channel.
mhm.
And that's kind of how I do it. I don't go to a church. I did try in the beginning, but I
What did
just
that? Explain that experience, your first experience with this as a new man entering the quote unquote house of God. What was that experience like?
well, if you want to go with my first true experience, we're going way back. We're going back to when I was a young child, maybe 6 or 7, and my grandma's a devout Catholic. So I went to a mass with her one morning, and a woman died in front of me.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
she passed out basically and just fell to the side, and she was on the end of the pews, and
Pews, yeah.
they have wooden arms at the end, solid hardwood.
Yeah.
She hit her head on that as she went down.
Oh,
Um, and she died. She bled out then and there. So I witnessed that. That was right in front of me, you know.
Roma.
And it never left me. And maybe that's why I had a lot of anti-Christian beliefs growing up, maybe into my teenage years. Maybe it was that experience, But as in hindsight now, I don't look at that back on. That's just an unfortunate circumstance. I don't think it's anything mystical or magical now. I
Oh,
think the
of
woman
course.
the woman was like 95. You know what I mean? It's kind of
Mm,
she was never going to survive that fall, no matter where she landed. It's that type of thing.
yeah,
But my own attempt to consciously go into a church because I want to be there,
yeah.
was again during this period of time before I met my wife, so maybe like 2016, 2017 period where I was coming off cannabis, I was looking for more community. I didn't have the YouTube community I have now, which I would call my church in a way. It's a gathering of like-minded Christians sharing ideas is a church as far as I'm
Indeed.
concerned. And that's what I have now, luckily. I wouldn't say I'm not a church leader. I'm not a pastor, or I don't misquote me on that. I just happen to have created a lovely community where even I'm a part of it. I'm not a leader of it, and I get to commune with people there, and that's my church in a way where we're one or more gatherers. We're a church.
Gathered in my name, that is church. Yes, indeed.
Exactly, So, but I did go to a few local ones in my area, and I got to know the leader of one of them, and it wasn't in a church. It was in a community center. But
Okay.
and they're lovely people. Don't get me wrong. Okay, they're
Yeah.
nice people. They mean well. They just don't know the stuff that
No.
I was
Yeah.
in. They don't think about it like that, and it's very much all about the community and it's I felt like they were just there to socialize with each other rather than actually consider the world as it is and
Yes.
deep about that kind of thing. It was more
Yeah.
just a community meeting rather than a church meeting in a way.
Mhm.
And I think that's probably money's behind that. At the end of the day, they have to reach certain standards and keep it above the line in certain ways to maintain that funding. I think there's a lot of that behind it. Because I did bring up some of these subjects with people and the pastor, and he was like, that's I'm not so sure about that type of thing. I don't think I want to talk about that or bring that up. And
Yeah.
I just nice people, but just I don't think they were my people.
Yeah.
Not where I belonged necessarily.
Mm.
Um, I needed more from my church than what they could offer.
Yeah.
And again, that's not any shade on them in a way. It's just that's how it was for me personally. I can't deny that. But
No,
like
it makes perfect sense, Paul, because before you had attended even, you've had done a lot of research and study in the Gnostic side, which will, as you say, dips in and out of Christianity and the extra biblical texts. So you're coming with a foundation of stuff that the average Christian, Mormon, Jehovah Witness, they have no clue, they have no basis or foundation on that. To them, it's all about the Trinity, or it's all about, Jesus being, the one and only. Um, there's no place for this extra biblical kind of conversations to bring the whole context of what the Bible is. Because remember, as you say, it's been canonized. What does that mean? That means they picked and choose the certain selection of books that they wanted to put forth to fit the predominant part of Christianity, which is the Roman Catholicism, adopts these pagan festivals, readjust them, and do all these kind of things, which gives so much credence to the New Age movement to say, oh, well, look, they're borrowing all of these pagan festivals and they're worshipping Mithra and, there's the sun god they're worshipping on Sunday. And there is truth to some of the things they're saying, but again, without the full volume of the book of the words, we don't have a full clear enough roadmap to really get to the nuts and bolts of what does his book, Holy Bible, he only left you basic instructions before leaving Earth.
yeah.
Why are we having some man teach his doctrine? Why don't we just read the word?
That was the whole Protestant movement and the letter on the door. There's a lot about that, and I'm not here again to like throw aspersions towards denominations, particularly. It's not a battle I want to get involved with, but I'm not a Catholic.
Mhm.
And I am open to extra biblical texts, yes, but I take them all within context of the canon. I
Yeah.
do understand there is some credence to why the text was canonized. I think there has been attempts, I believe, throughout history to make minor changes here and there in translation, which is lost through English from the original Masoretic text, but I think the Dead Sea Scrolls has proven unequivocally that the text has not changed in thousands of years, and it's the most heavily scrutinized text in the world. To change it would be highly noticed very quickly, in any form of translation. So it's the story is vast and complex, and it's not written in a linear way as much as people think it is.
No.
And it has to be seen as a whole to understand the whole picture, and you can't
Yes.
look at one particular event that's talked about in the Bible and then create a portrait of God from that, or a caricature of God from that, should I say, not even a real portrait. Um, it's predominantly the story of the Israelites as well.
Yes.
It's a story about a particular type of people, and within context to other stories all around the world of other cultures who existed around the same times,
Mhm.
you'll find there are plenty of other stories that talk about the world as it was then, but maybe
Yes.
from a Christian, well, no, a Judaic one God perspective. There was a lot of
Mhm.
pantheistic religions around at the same time
Indeed.
that
We're
talk about
talking
the same world.
pre-Diluvian, pre-Diluvian times, right?
Well, antediluvian and post-diluvian. There was a lot of false idolic worship and worship of the sun, the pantheon of gods,
Yeah.
and there was nature worship, pagan cults all
Yes.
over the place. It's always just been kind of the case, and the Bible is the story of one particular people in a particular geographical location that can't be denied.
Yeah.
Um, but that's why my work draws on all cultures all over the earth, and I look at folk traditions, and I draw parallels from their descriptions of their ancestor spirits, as they call them.
Yeah.
And I believe the ancestor spirits they're referring to, and they openly admit this, is not grandma and granddad,
Mhm.
or the great aunties and uncles. They're talking about the creators of their civilization, their ancient
Yes.
gods, and those were the kings and rulers of an ancient time. And these are specifically the Nephilim, who are now in spirit form. And that's why they have their rituals. It's to evoke those particular spirits.
Spirits.
And
Yes.
what they do is they dress like them. And I found that the common thread through all these ancestor worship religions on every continent is that they all seem to exhibit one or two or maybe three or four features that we would associate with a modern Western clown. Polka dots, wild, crazy red hair, um, stilts is actually quite common as well, believe it or not, and white face, white skin, red wide lips, large glowing eyes, things like that, and you find what I seem to have stumbled upon is, and this is by design, is a Freemason called Charles Dibdin in the 1800s essentially amalgamated all these features together that he'd probably gleaned from all these cultures which he'd met while traveling, and he created his own version of the ancestor spirit, and he made it occulted, so we don't know that's what it is, and he called it a clown. Um, and that's basically where we get clowns from. They're just a amalgamation of ancestor spirit worship cultures and their dress. And now we dress this way, and we don't realize that we're dressing like the Nephilim, basically.
The fallen.
And we're also evoking them, but in ignorance in the West. Because this is the difference between the West and the rest of the world. They know what they're doing all over the earth. They commune with
Oh
demons
yeah.
and they're happy with it. But
Yeah.
because we're such a heavily Christianized sect of the earth,
Hmm.
and have a deep history of Christian thought,
Indeed.
we're more aware of demons and the negative connotations of them and their effect and their agendas. So they have to kind of remain a bit more hidden in the West. So what they've done is they've hidden behind the image of a clown that we now associate with things like, for the children,
Yeah.
laughter, goofiness, funniness,
Funny.
harmless,
Yeah.
silly. But what it really is a carbon copy of the ancestor spirit ritual clothing that is worn by everyone else who's purposefully trying to be possessed by Nephilim spirits. And that's the danger, that you have to be careful about what you choose to watch, listen to, and where. It's this world is a spiritual world, and it basically symbols open up portals, and
Yes.
the clown is a symbol. That's what it is fundamentally. It's a symbol for the Nephilim.
Symbols and sigils. So Stephen King clearly drew upon this with his classic of It, which they did that new sort of remake, or It 2, whatever it was.
Oh yeah,
Do you
it basically is what I just said in a book and in a film. Yeah, that's basically what it is. This is the thing, right? I don't believe these authors that I know donned as the most amazing authors of our generation and so talented and creative and amazing and wonderful. They're not. They just know things and they just put
Oh
it
yeah.
into a book. And then we, the ignorant masses, think they're creative geniuses. But they're actually just
Yes.
retelling ancient stories that have been told over and over again. There's nothing special about them, and it is basically a interdimensional killer demon that has a spider form that manifests into the physical world in the form of whatever people fear the most, and a
Yeah.
clown is the most predominant one it chooses to manifest as. That's the fictional story, but I believe the specific focus on the clown in that book was a hint that yes, the Nephilim, the demons in the spirit realm, do look like that in a way. Not just like a clown. I think a clown is a really cartoonish,
Version.
stereotyped caricature.
Hmm.
What they really looked like was actually a lot more terrifying, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really pale porcelain white skin, huge, sharp, angular
Teeth.
grins with teeth. And they had serpent-like mouths that opened really wide. A snake can dislocate its jaw to eat its prey. People don't
Yeah.
realize that, but they have a
Yeah.
huge maw. They would have had huge eyes that glowed. They would have had huge, long foreheads and skulls. They would have had wild red hair coming out the sides of them. They would have had blood around the mouth from the cannibalism and big, long, thin, red human lips on this weird reptilian mouth. They would have had multicolored, fractal pattern reptilian skin.
Skin. Yeah.
They would have had feather motifs all over them as well, from like the feathered serpents, like Quetzalcoatl was one of their parents. They would have had they would have been giants. They would have been enormous. They would have had long, thin, weird, creepy features as well, because snakes are long, elongated creatures.
Yes.
Um, Everything about them would have been absolutely mortifying for a human being to witness. You would have just stopped dead with fear if you actually witnessed one of these things for what they were. And that's why God sent a flood, and that's why it was necessary to wipe out all the giants that were in Canaan. These genocides that people wonder about. Humanity was contending with something that was a predator in
Yeah.
its truest form. It was
Mm.
killing us. It was eating us. People were sacrificing their children to it. People were offering it up, as sacrifices, as food. The blood was being drunk regularly. There were cults dedicated to worshiping them and subjugating societies to continue to worship them too.
Yes.
It was a horrible time to be alive and a truly corrupt time for humanity. And it got to the point where all flesh was corrupted, as it says in the Bible.
Corrupt.
And
Hmm.
even humanity themselves change their own DNA to be like them.
Yeah.
And mix themselves with other animals
With.
to be like Nephilim, the gods that they idolized. And Noah was the only one left. That's basically what happened. And then people argue, well, there are other flood myths all over the earth. So, Noah's just a copy of that myth. It's like, no, they're just stories of Nephilim surviving the flood. That's all they are, happening at the same time as Noah.
So do you draw parallels to you draw their inception from the Genesis 1 creation?
In what do you mean, a pre-Adamic race? Are you talking about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
I do believe there was a pre-Adamic race. The people of Day 6 is what Gary Wayne refers to them as. The Blackheads is another example from the Zep-Tepi. But I would say they were basically created, and it's described in the Bible as God created man and woman, plural, together at once, man and woman.
He
And then
created them.
he just says he created man and woman.
Hmm.
That's creating two things at once, plural, multiple beings.
Yeah.
And he said, "Go forth and multiply and spread over, dominate the earth, and have dominion over it, and be caretakers." Basically, and I do
Yes.
think that was the first creation of humanity, and they did spread the earth, man and woman together. Then it seems like immediately after that, it says God then created Adam from the dust of the earth and did the breath of life into him, and made him a living soul. I think Adam was a second creation, specifically created, because then it says he put him in the garden alone, without a woman.
Separate. Yeah.
It's a different, two different stories there, and I'm sure maybe possibly lost throughout history. I bet there's a book out there explaining what happened in that gap somewhere that isn't canon. I bet
is your hypothesis or understanding that the angels created the first creation and then the Most High created the second creation, is in Adam, and put him in Eden?
No, it's all God. I think there are corruptions out there that would like you to believe angels are involved with the creation of making life, but the angels were watchers. Their job was to watch God's creation. These people of day 6, that's all their job was, just to watch them, just to make sure they're okay, and they ruled as gods over these people. Essentially, they were the first real pantheons. There's a story, a very old story from the Popol Vuh, which is an American Great Plains kind of text, and it talks about a giant serpent feathered monster that had a golden throne that lived among the people and taught them how to make fire, and basically was kind of basically among them as a god, and he was full of pride and ordained in jewels. It was incredibly beautiful, basically how Lucifer was described in the Bible. And he says that this person became so prideful that he tried to destroy the creator, the big god, and that he was cast down from the world, the big tree, down to earth, or something like that. And it's basically telling the story of Lucifer, who was one of these watchers who was supposed to be watching over people and decided, I am not going to bow down to humanity. And that's basically where the first rebellion comes from, when God created Adam and put him in the Garden of Eden. And these angels watched Adam naming all the animals. The angels were like, God didn't. It's like, God didn't give us that privilege.
Yeah.
Why is he letting this monkey do it? You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of not, well, we are the serpentine angel race. Surely we should be given dominion over everything, right? And that's basically that prideful jealousy is the first rebellion that caused the fall, And from then on, it seems like there was a period of time where they went quiet, these rebellious angels who were cast down, and they're probably still in the earth, but they were just kind of watched. And then it seems like it says, they sent a serpent into the garden to deceive Eve, basically. It says, the serpent was more cunning than any other animal, basically. Yeah. We don't know. People say, well, that was Satan. I don't think that's what was going on. I don't know. I wasn't there, okay? But it's been theorized that perhaps the serpent was a race of beings that lived at the time, which were like upright walking lizard people, like human in form, And it seems like the whole birds of a feather flock together type of situation, and the lizard men sided with the rebellious lizard angels, the seraphim angels, basically. Yes. And it's kind of like, you're our kind, we're on your side. We think we should have been made the leaders of the earth, not the man, it should have been the lizard, basically. And I think it was one of them who was allowed to walk freely in the Garden of Eden. They were allowed to be there, convinced Eve to do something she shouldn't have done, to rebel, basically. And that's what got them cast out. There's loads of stuff in between. People argue about whether, she had sex with a lizard person and created Cain and all the, but I don't know if any of that's true. It's all speculation.
Enmity between thy seed and the woman's seeds.
Yes, yeah, all that stuff. All that stuff. Yeah. And now again, although that's possible, I think the story can still go on without that being the case. Okay. The whole corruption issue is still there regardless. It's an inner thing, not necessarily a DNA thing. Okay.
Serpent seed you're referring to, yeah?
Yeah, it's not necessarily a serpent seed thing. Although I am empathetic to the theory, and I'm not denying the theory. I do think the rebellious nature in our hearts is what you can also glean from the story if you don't want to go down that route of literal seed corruption. Cain rebelled against God by killing his brother, because his sacrifice wasn't considered as good as his brother's. It was jealousy, it was pride. Just the same reason Lucifer rebelled against God. He didn't want to bow down to a human. It was jealousy and pride, And again, this whole birds of a feather flock together, people of a kind, kind of work together type of thing. I think once the casting out of Eden was done, and once witnessing Cain murder his brother, I do think the angels who had rebelled and were cast into the earth watched this happen and basically made a deal with Cain and said, you don't like God, we don't like God, let's work together, basically. And it seems like a pact was made where the daughters of Cain would have sex with the Watchers, who were convinced by Lucifer to have sex with women, basically. It seemed like the Watchers he convinced weren't necessarily a part of the rebellion initially. They were just actually workers on the earth who watched, and it seems like
Remember, Azazel and them taught women how to beautify, etc.
Absolutely, yeah. They taught all sorts. They taught them everything, and it was while this whole sex thing was going on, it seems like they were teaching them stuff, and it did nothing but corrupt humanity. He created the Nephilim, who at first were seen as gods, as brilliant things, as amazing ones, but then very quickly became cannibalistic monsters that humans couldn't support anymore. And then within, this happened in the 6th generation from Seth.
Yeah.
So, sorry, yes, from Seth is the days of Jared. This is when the incursion happened. So, humans have been around for a while. The lineage of Seth, the lineage of Cain, mixing with the people of day 6 had kind of always been around, Cities were being built. Cain himself was no angel. Like, he was a brutal dictator, and he was subjugating these people of day 6 to build cities for him.
Yes.
He was a man who walked with Adam, who walked with God. He knew stuff.
Yes.
He knew things. He introduced like weights and measures and all sorts of things to the people, money and all that kind of thing, And once you add weights and measures into somebody's vocabulary, you start dividing property and lines up, and you create factions, you create war, and he basically said, as soon as he left, he got a wife from somewhere and built
the land of Nod, Paul.
and built a city,
Where would you say that geographically today the land of Nod could be if it was east of Eden?
I couldn't say. I would not like to hazard a guess. I really would not. I've heard speculation, perhaps it was Russia, but I mean, who the hell knows? Like, honestly, truly, I've had so many arguments over where Eden was, and we don't know where we're starting from to get east of Eden, So I don't. Again, I don't.
The starting point. Well, I haven't heard Russia. Russia's a new one. I'll have to look at that element of it. But Eden itself had, correct me, listeners, commenters, had to have been on the continent of Africa, which encompasses what we call Israel. It's on the tectonic plates, moving further over to Saudi Arabia or the quote-unquote Middle East, which is oxymoronic to even call it the Middle East, but we use it for layman's terms and for talking purposes. But that whole, in the Bible, that's where we're talking about, that place of
it does seem like a special place to God, because it was that land that was promised to the Israelites, the land of Canaan, as it was called. As it was filled with all these giants who seemed to know to go to that one spot.
Yes.
And that's where they all congregated. So there's a lot of evidence pointing that direction, but we don't know how far he traveled east to get to the land of Nod.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We don't
true.
know these things. I think it's, again, even though it's interesting to speculate, I think you can get bogged down in the weeds trying to get
the minutiae.
The overarching stories, the bigger picture is kind of what I've always been interested in. I like the minutiae. I do like those little details and speculation, but I would never, bet money on any of these answers. Because
no, you couldn't. You really couldn't. No.
Exactly. But I mean, we're talking about, like I said, the rebellion, and Cain was no angel, and it does seem like I've read in the book of Lamech of Cain. It's a book that got released recently by the Vatican, supposedly, and it's an old antediluvian story, and it talks about Cain's lineage, and by the 6th generation from Cain was Lamech, and there was 2 Lamechs. There was a Lamech on Seth's side, and there's a Lamech on Cain's side. Okay, so this is the evil Lamech on Cain's side, and his story is really weird. It gives some insight into just how evil and corrupt the antediluvian age was. He's basically trying to ask his father, like, who did Cain mate with to create all these people? It's like it doesn't make any sense, and his father doesn't really have an adequate answer for him. And he's kind of like, he wants an answer to this question. So it seems like even then, people were ignorant about their history. The corruption was kind of happening already, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They didn't know about the people of day six type of thing. It was just,
Mm.
it was a bit of a confusion matter then. And Cain basically says, and why do all the children of Cain have leprous white skin? Why are we cursed with this chalky porcelain white weird dead person's skin? You know the mark of Cain and the people who want
Yes.
from it. And that theory alone was for my own clown theory was perfect because it makes sense. If serpentine like fiery angels are mixing with porcelain white skinned children of Cain, and you get a
Mm.
white skinned redhead monster we call a clown, that's basically the result, isn't it? So
Yeah.
that kind of it fit to my theory quite prominently, which is why I'm inclined to believe that may have been what the mark of Cain was, but I don't know. And again, you have to be careful with these extra biblical texts because you just don't know who the thought.
Yeah. Okay. Let's again look at the landmass. And as you pointed out, if he's saying just like Noah was an albino, wasn't he?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
and it
it's,
said
it's
Noah was born, and he has the visage of the sons of the angels, is what it said.
yes,
Like
exactly.
he looks
So
like a Nephilim, and
this is it. So
his dad was freaked out and was like going to his dad, like, "Dad, I'm freaking out. I
yeah.
think I've given birth to a Nephilim." And it wasn't. It's just because he had divine nature to him, which was inherited from God, because he was going to be the progenitor of all mankind.
Indeed,
And you
yes.
can't you can't not have a divine nature to you without this white skin, pale, glowing eye, brilliant bright hair thing going on. He had white curly hair apparently. And obviously Nephilim being half angel naturally had that glow about them, and it's kind of but Noah being a part of God. God, no, don't forget, it says, God creates people. He knew you before you were even in the womb.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
Noah was created for a divine purpose, essentially. So no wonder he had
Yeah.
such crazy divine features. But yeah, I actually wrote in my book about Noah because you can glean from his description what people thought Nephilim looked like during that time. Do you get what I
Yeah.
mean? Because
Yeah.
his own dad says to him, well, says to his dad, I think my wife has given birth to a Nephilim creature. Like, you know what I mean? And if he's thinking that, then that means whatever Noah looked like, we can say the Nephilim must have had similar features. So I've
Yeah.
kind of used that in my book, as an
Yes, as a reference, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And also it also begs well, it raises the question, well, what did the rest of the people look like? Because if we look at, let's go back to like Christendom and etc. and the leaflets and the images of Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus on and all of the saints and stuff. They look like you, Paul.
White and yeah.
Yeah. But geographically, like though we wouldn't have had that we would have had a homogeneous society of sorts, but predominantly people would have generally brown skin, right?
I don't know what the world was even like then. Maybe there wasn't even like sunshine as we know it then. Maybe melanin was a completely different thing and how it interacts with this.
Manifested.
This is thousands of years ago. I think people were a lot bigger then as well. You know what I mean? I think it was a different time. It's described as like the golden age in other terminology and outside
Yeah.
sources. You know what I mean? It was a time when there was no darkness. There was
Yeah.
no moon and all this type of thing. It was a perpetual light. You know what I mean? And everything was lighter then, and gravity was even different, and all this type of thing. And
We lived longer as well. We wasn't
yeah, it
dying
was
at
like
100
900
age.
years. Yeah, so I think race
It's
wasn't really a thing. I don't think it was a thing then. Maybe post-Diluvian, maybe race became a thing because I think people get confused. I think the earth, the world, and the spiritual realm are one thing. I think we are spiritual creatures. Even our reality is a spirit realm of some kind. And I think there's a nature to it we don't quite understand. And it says after the flood, God put a rainbow in the sky as a sign that
fine.
he would never flood the earth ever again. And I've
Yeah.
kind of, through my own psychedelic perspective, this is so say Paul, not so saith the Lord, but it perhaps it's trying to say your perception of reality is now limited to the color spectrum. I've limited your perceptions of the spirit realm to this very minute band of light frequency, And I think that was done to protect us from the spirits of the Nephilim, which now reside in the spirit realm in disembodied form after being wiped out by wars and the flood. And it was our way of no longer having to communicate with them. But I think that might have also changed the way we perceive each other in terms of color as well. I think it changed everything about humanity down. And I think that's perhaps where the term a human comes from, a man of hue, a man of color.
Versus mankind.
Exactly. Yeah. I think something changed after the flood dramatically, and I think the world became a much harder physical place as a result of it. And our flesh became a lot more of an issue, which is why the man for a savior came, And again, I don't judge a man, by the color of his skin. It's by character. And that's kind of how it probably always was before something happened to it.
Before these space monkeys, as I like to call them, or these wicked beings who've come into power and have put all these crazy things into place, geo-social political terms, i.e. black and white. I am not black. You're not white. We don't have a color spectrum like that. We are people. And we have I guess we have nationalities, i.e. where we come from on this plane of existence. But this idea of race and ethnicity, we can clearly see that there are differences in this plane of existence in regards to people. We've got humans, we've got mankind. This is noble talking now. We've got Cro-Magnon man walking around here. We've got the sons of Anak walking around here. We've got all types of different beings. We've got hybrids walking around. I see people who are, who look normal, and I see people think, they're clearly mixed with something. They've got a little bit of a different aura to them as well. We've got a whole, explosion of different things that are going on, but because in most people's sense, that's myth and fairy tales. There's no such thing as dwarfs and fairies. There's no such thing as dragons. Even though if we go to a museum, they now call them dinosaurs. It's like it's tricky. It's tricky.
This is the problem. I agree with what you said, that there are obvious differences. Okay, but I think in terms of salvation, that's why Christ came, is to put an end to this issue of difference. Everyone can be born again in Christ now. Do you know what I mean? And it's some people will never take that offer, and maybe they're the ones that are too far gone. But it's not like it was never open to them. You know what I mean? Yes. Maybe there are people who identify with a specific class and/or race. And I'm not just talking about skin color. It could be a type of race.
Indeed.
You know what I mean? Like maybe some people do identify with it so hardcore that it defines them in a way which might not be good for the rest of humanity. And then they create their own sects and cults dedicated to that type of thing. Sure. But I think in terms of the corruption of humanity, I think it was the whole point of needing a savior. I think we're kind of, everyone is a little bit messed up. Everyone has a bit of that corruption in them, that genetic corruption as well as, spiritual corruption.
Yeah.
And again, it's complicated to talk about because there are so many people who disagree with these ideas and things.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't want to dwell on it myself because I get people who try and argue with me, for example, that, well, you're encouraging killing people because they might have lizard blood in them. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like, no, that's not where I'm going with this. But I can see how some people may come to that incredibly dangerous conclusion with this type of research. Do you get what I mean?
Extreme. As there are extremes, there's, as they say, there's Christian extremists, there's Muslim extremists, there's scientism extremism. There's extremism in every facet and idea and concept that man has.
Absolutely. And it worries me, that type of thing, because that's not what I'm propagating, you know what I mean? And when I say, God wiped out the giants in Canaan using Israel, people are saying, well, you're saying then that God killed people, God was killing people, and God doesn't do that type of thing. He was justified just because they're a different race, it's okay to kill them type of thing. That's evil, And it's like, no, I don't think you understand what these things actually were. They weren't anywhere close to people. Not like today with these corruptions. They're pretty much, You know what I mean? They're
They're
just
trying,
yeah,
yeah.
that's what I mean. Like, but then they weren't even close. The differences were apparent, like not only in looks but in stature, and
Yes.
in the way they acted too. It was pure, continuous, vicious, anti-human evil.
Mm.
Anti God's creation evil,
Yeah.
and they were monsters by the true definition of it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's different today. We don't live in that weird
No.
antediluvian time. Now we kind of do have to just deal in the physical realm with people mainly. Perhaps there are cryptids here and there and creatures of the night, that are spooky and creepy, and perhaps remnants of these twisted creatures from the past. These humans who mix themselves with animals. Perhaps there are a few mermaids knocking about here and there, a few vampires knocking about, but and
Mm.
like giant hairy men here and there. They're always
Yeah.
reported to be seen, but
Sasquatch and all.
yeah, it's not what it was. You know what I mean? It's not. It's. We were saved from how brutal it truly was. Mankind is the main evil on this world now, if there's anything.
Mm.
And this is like it's the end days now. It's the separation of the wheat from the chaff sort of situation.
Yes.
There are going to be some people of every faction, both human and of perhaps Cro-Magnon or reptilian blood, who are going to side with both sides. Some of them might be saved, some of them might not. It's kind of it's messed up now. It's really messed up. But that's you know, I believe in God's mercy. Let's put it that way.
Yes. Totally. The blueprint's been put, it has been laid, the
Yeah.
information is there. Um, you know, people who have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. It's one of those, and I think just like with everything, we go to primary school, junior school, secondary school, high school, college, university, YTS or apprenticeship schemes. These are all levels. These are all processes. Some people are still stuck in primary school. We just need to try and help them elevate past the primary school, secondary school, and get into the point where they're now doing their own PhDs in whatever field they want, so they can now start to utilize more of that brain, start to focus on themselves rather than living vicariously through their favorite bloody housewife or football star, and actually realize how special they are and how important they are. And actually, wait a minute, there wasn't a big bang that went off, and then single cell organisms then started to come around and blah blah blah, and don't believe in a monolithic all-seeing creator force. No, just think about yourself. After you die, that's it. Accumulate as much money as possible, live as low and base level as you can, and everything will be everything. That's not the way to be. We are special. We are so, so special. And these wicked space monkeys are doing everything to show us that, well, we're not special. We're just ordinary.
Yeah.
We've got aliens all over the place. We've got all these different stuff going on. We're just a speck of dust, on this little rock somewhere. No,
No.
we there's nothing else. There are dimensions. There's clearly other dimensions and stuff. As far as little green men on planet Centurion, I'm not too sure about that kind of stuff, personally.
Personally, me either. I'm not buying it. I would say they've always been here. They're demons.
Yes.
They're in disembodied form right now, but they're trying their damnedest to get back here in physical form. They never left, you see. They can't leave the earth once they die. They're not allocated to heaven. They're just allocated for destruction in the end. And their waiting place, their purgatory, the place where their soul is constantly reincarnated is back here on earth. Um, and they have worked with human beings in secret societies who are kind of their foot soldiers, in
Yeah.
the physical realm, all orchestrated by higher powers and principalities. The fallen angelic rebellion never ended, and they use their children in the spirit realm, the Nephilim, to corrupt us, manipulate us. They love to inhabit our bodies because they haven't got one.
Yes.
They can experience pleasures of the flesh, and they manipulate us to do things in order to placate them, not to give ourselves
Yes.
pleasure. And they use our senses to feel things. That's possession in its purest form. In
Mm.
fact, pure possession is where you don't even know they're there.
Yeah,
that's what they're really aiming for,
yeah,
to make you think that you want to do all that stuff and you're doing it for you.
exactly. Exactly. And then a step further, Paul, is when you've got these, and my heart goes out to these people, who have lost a loved one, and they'll go to these soothsayers who will allegedly make contact with their relative on the other side, not
Yeah.
knowing that they've got a demon in their presence, whispering sweet nothings to this poor person who's just seeking a bit of closure, to be close to their loved one, and they're talking to a demon, allowing a demon to make that connection, thinking it's their loved one.
Yeah, well, that's the ancestor spirit worship coming back in. It's all a lie. Now, the difference is we think we're actually talking to grandma and granddad in the West,
Yeah,
but in other cultures, they know they're talking to demons and they're trying to get powers from demons. I
yeah,
mean, this is what I mean. These channels or mediums, these ones who are communicating with your dead father, let's say, they just literally have a demon there telling them what to say.
yeah,
Because that demon has watched you your entire life. It knows
exactly.
everything about you. It knows everything your father said to you before he died. It knows everything. It was there. It
Mm,
watched. And it's been on here for thousands of years. It
hmm.
knows more than you will ever know about humanity and the way we think and feel. And that's where the medium gets his power from. He gets it from the demon he works with and probably gives sacrifices to and lets the demon come into his body so he can do stuff and feel the pleasure or whatever. There's a
Yeah,
deal. There's a deal there. There's a back
yeah.
and forth being made. And in return, the medium gets to seem like he has magical powers to an ignorant person.
Mm,
It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all lies. It's all based in your naivety and ignorance. The less you know, the more power they have. That's the whole point of secret societies. That's why it's a secret. But yeah, that one really grinds my gears as well. It's a disgusting.
yeah.
It really is.
It's pervasive. It's so pervasive because you get one person, and it's the referral thing. Oh yeah, so we've done that. I got to speak to my cousin, and I spoke to my great grandmother, and it's really interesting because I'm finding out my own history now. But because oh wow, I can learn about my family history as well, and the domino effect happens, and then we then move over to, oh well, Sarah, she's not right, she's talking to herself and stuff.
Oh yeah,
Let's put
it
let's put her in
changed.
a hospital.
Yeah,
No,
it
no,
changed.
let's put her in a hospital, Paul, because she's mentally ill. Not that she's possessed by demons or she's communing with demons. She's mentally ill. No, I'm not saying that there are not people who are mentally ill. I'm not saying that whatsoever. But what I am saying is there are many people who are demon possessed who are classed as mentally ill. They're bipolar. They've got multiple personalities. This is
Oh yeah.
demons.
That's true. Yeah, no, I do see that quite a lot as well. Jerry Marzinski, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's a psychiatrist who worked heavily in the prison system, dealing with schizophrenics specifically.
Yes.
And yeah, he has come to the conclusion himself that no, these people are demon possessed, and they know it, and these entities within them react specifically in the same ways to certain stimuli, including the Bible and things like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And their consciousness, they are their own individual consciousnesses within people. They are entities with thoughts and feelings. They are individuals within another individual. It's
Yeah.
not just some kind of weird psychological defect of some kind.
Mm.
Absolutely, yeah, I'm with you on that one. Yeah,
Or a chemical imbalance. It's
yeah, something like that.
scary. It really is scary. Um, Paul, I don't want to take up any more of your time. It has been a thoroughly edutaining conversation. I would definitely like to go into more detail, reference your specific, because we touched a little bit on the Nephilim clown stuff, but I definitely want to have you back to go into some more detail. We can hash that out. Um,
Yeah, sure.
two two questions before you depart, sir.
Sure.
Firstly, have you had fun tonight?
I have. It's been nice to talk about something else other than the clowns, to be honest. It actually has. Yeah, it's different. It's different. I like it.
Excellent, excellent. My last question for you, sir, is please tell us who you are, but do not tell us your name, Senor.
Who am I?
Mhm.
Um, I am the reluctant world expert on clown mythology now.
There we go.
There we go. That's who I've become. Uh, but But fundamentally, I'm just some guy with some ideas.
Love it. Love it. Please throw out all your social medias and I'll make sure I put them down in the description below, sir.
I will do. Thank you very much. Like I said, you can find me on YouTube. That's where I am predominantly, but I'm on all the other platforms: Twitter, BitChute, Odyssey. I have a GoFundMe for the book, and I'm also on Telegram if you're interested.
Excellent. As I say, I will make sure I put the links below. If you are interested in this topic and you want to support Paul, reference this up and coming book, links below. Follow it, like, comment, subscribe. Tell a friend to jump on the train.
Thank you.
Adios.